Hi, I'm Diane McKiernan, and this is Meet the Producer. I am coming up on my 20th year in the audiobook industry, and over my time as an audiobook producer, I have worked with authors like Elizabeth Gilbert, Michael Pollan, Subha Tahir, and Amor Tolls. Some of the productions I've worked on have received Audies, a Grammy, Sovis Awards, and most recently, a title I co-produce, Mexicid, has won an Odyssey honor. So I would say my origin story as an audiobook producer starts when I was in college. I went to Fordham University and I worked at our college radio station there, WFUV, in the newsroom. They actually let the students write the news and we would go on air and deliver the news, though I hated that part. But we would conduct interviews with local politicians and splice up those interviews into sound bites. And I had listened to audiobooks here and there as a kid, but that was sort of my first introduction to telling a story via the audio format as an adult. And I knew I had wanted to get into publishing. And when I graduated college, I saw a listing for an audio assistant at Penguin Audio. I applied, I got the job, and I have been working in audio ever since. A recent production I produced is The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman, narrated by Nicholas Guy Smith. The Bright Sword is an epic story in every sense of the word. It is a reimagining of King Arthur and the Round Table. And when the story begins, a young knight, Colum, shows up at Camelot to fight for a place at the Round Table, only to discover that King Arthur has died 2 weeks ago. And the remaining cast of characters and knights around the Round Table are not at all what he expected they would be. And then we continue to follow this unbelievable cast of characters as they continue with a journey, and there just is not a dull moment in the book. When I initially reached out to the author, Lev, to discuss casting, he wanted to make sure that we found a narrator with a sense of humor and a narrator that could add a sense of lightness, and someone that was good with verbal play, because this is not just, though the plot is so involved and it is such an epic journey, each sentence is just so magnificent and the writing is so good. We wanted to make sure we found a narrator that could really give each word its due. And Nicholas Guy Smith immediately came to my mind. He narrated A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolls a few years back. And I can still remember the way that he differentiated the voices and the characters in that book. It was just fantastic. And I felt like he would be a really good fit for this audiobook. And Lev took a listen and agreed. So Nick did not disappoint. His narration is incredible. This book also has a historical note at the very end that gives a lot of context to the world of King Arthur in history and what was changed and what liberties were taken. And I thought it would be nice to hear that in the author's voice, since it's a little bit of a departure from the story itself. And when I reached out to Lev, he was completely game to narrate it himself, but also happened to be traveling around Australia. So after a little bit of back and forth trying to lock in a studio, which was tricky just because of the time difference, we got Lev into a studio in Sydney to record the historical note, which I think is just a really nice button on the end of this audiobook. And I'm just so excited for listeners to dive into this audiobook. A production I worked on recently that I would love for people to check out is The Best Short Stories 2024, which is coming out in October. It's a short story anthology of the O. Henry Prize winners. I actually don't produce short story collections often, and I don't really listen to them on my own. So working on this was really such a wonderful surprise. It is just incredible how much depth of feeling these authors can create in one short story. And the characters are so vivid. Each story is just a treasure in its own. And to have 20 of them in one anthology was super fun to work on. My co-producer Kirby and I cast each story with a different narrator, and they're some of my favorite narrators. It's just a stellar cast, and I hope people check it out. I think the most memorable moment of my career remains when I worked on Joan Rivers' audiobook, Diary of a Mad Diva, in 2014. She came into our studio to record the audiobook, and she was just a class act through and through. Such a hard worker, such a performer, and so funny, so gracious. She would get in the booth and she would read each little joke to herself. She would read the text in her head, and then she would deliver it in kind of like one take. And then she would look at us outside of the glass to see if we were laughing. And then she knew she landed the joke and we could move on. So it was just really such a pleasure to get to work on that with her. I'm Diane McKiernan, and this was Meet the Producer. Thanks for watching.